Before the telegraph, before the radio, a life-or-death message had to cross a continent. Native Americans possessed a technology written not in wire, but in fire and sky. It was a language of smoke, a fleeting message seen for miles, holding the power to save a people or warn of an invasion. This is the story of the ancient trick they used to conquer distance, a lost language that we are only just beginning to rediscover. Act by the tyranny of distance. The North American continent. A land of staggering beauty and brutal scale. For the tens of millions of people who lived here for millennia, this scale presented a fundamental challenge. How do you govern a territory? How do you hunt, trade, or wage war across lands that stretch for thousands of miles? In the 19th century, the American West was defined by a new invention, the telegraph. A line of wire that for the first time made distance irrelevant. But for the indigenous peoples of the plains, the mountains and the deserts conquering distance was not a new idea. They had been doing it for centuries. When we think of technology, we almost exclusively think of mechanical or digital objects, a phone, a computer. But technology is simply a tool that solves a human problem, and the problem of long-distance communication is one of the oldest. The indigenous solutions were based on an entirely different operating system, the natural world. It wasn't about imposing a machine on the landscape, but about using the landscape itself as the medium. My grandfather used to say, "The land is always talking, you just have to learn how to listen." For us, a message wasn't just data. It wasn't just ones and zeros. It was a living thing. A wisp of smoke, the flash of a mirror, the footfall of a runner. It was all part of a relationship. To send a message was to ask the land, the sky, the fire, to carry it for you. Of all these natural technologies, one has captured the imagination above all others. A symbol so powerful, it's become a stereotype, yet so misunderstood, it's been dismissed as simple. The smoke signal. The Hollywood version is frankly an insult. It's a caricature. What we're talking about is a sophisticated, prearranged, coded system. It's the 19th century equivalent of encrypted messaging. It was fast, it was effective, and for the US cavalry it was a ghost. They could see it, but they couldn't read it. And they certainly couldn't stop it. Sending a message 20 miles in 10 minutes without a single piece of metal, that's not primitive. That's genius. But how did it actually work? How do you turn a simple fire into a coherent long-distance message? The trick is not in the fire. It's in the smoke, and controlling it is a forgotten art. To understand this lost language, we must go back to the first element, the fire itself. You can't send a signal if you can't start the fire. And you have to do it fast in any weather. This is where it all begins. The quest to replicate this ancient trick starts not with a signal, but with a spark. Act 2. The anatomy of a signal. To create a signal, you first need an ember, the most reliable and advanced friction fire method used across North America was the bow drill. This is a beautiful piece of physics. It's all about speed and pressure. You have your spindle, your fire board, a flat, dry piece of wood, often yucca or cottonwood, your bow, a curved branch with a leather thong or plant fiber cord, and a handhold, a piece of stone or dense wood. See this, the bow allows me to generate incredible rotational speed, far more than a simple hand drill. The downward pressure I'm applying with the handhold, that's creating intense friction. The friction is heating the wood to its ignition point, over 800 degrees Fahrenheit. The dark dust that's being ground off is pyrrolizing or charring. This dust is catching the heat, That's not fire. That's just hot dust. The ember is in that pile. This is the tinder bundle. It's the incubator for the flame. Its preparation is as much an art as the fire starting itself. It must be bone dry and fine enough to catch a spark, but with enough structure to allow airflow. You're feeding it oxygen. Gently, gently. You're coaxing that single tiny spark to life. And that's the engine. But this is a campfire. It produces heat and light. For a signal, this is almost useless. A signal needs one thing, and one thing only: smoke. Massive, dense, visible smoke. This is the part that is so ingenious. A good campfire is an efficient fire. It burns hot with minimal smoke. A signal fire is the exact opposite. It is a deliberately inefficient fire. You want to choke the combustion. This fire is just the heat source. The smoke comes from the fuel, I add now. If I want white smoke, I need material with a high moisture content. See, all that moisture is being instantly vaporized, carrying the particles of unburnt wood, the smoke with it. This white smoke is highly visible against a dark background, like a pine-covered mountain or a dark cliff face. But what if the sky is overcast, or my background is pale rock like this canyon? White smoke will disappear. I need black smoke. Resin oil tar. These burn dirty. They create a heavy particle-rich smoke that is starkly visible against a bright or cloudy sky. The signaller had to be a botanist. They had to know exactly what to gather in any season to produce the color they needed. They knew the land. They knew that buffalo grass, when damp, gives a clean white smoke. They knew that sagebrush gives a grayish plume. They knew that the pitch from a ponderosa pine would give that thick, dark warning. Smoke. This wasn't just gathering sticks. This was an act of deep ecological knowledge. Now the final component. The fire is the engine. The green boughs are the fuel. But the blanket is the key. This is what turns a column of smoke into a sentence. This is the part everyone thinks they know. The up and down motion. But it's not random. It's a precise, exhausting two-man job. One person or team is managing the fire, constantly feeding it the smoke fuel. The other is the signaller. You hold it down. You're building pressure, letting the smoke collect. 1, 2, 3. And cover, you have to be fast. You're cutting the smoke column. You're creating a space. You see, those are two distinct puffs. Not a long, lazy plume. That's a letter. That's a word. That's all clear. This lazy fanning motion. This is what you see in the movies. All this does is break up the smoke column. It creates a wavering or spiral signal. This also had a meaning, but it's not the same as the puff. A single puff, a series of 3, a long, unbroken column, a wavering spiral. These were the letters of the alphabet. A simple 4-letter alphabet, perhaps. But when combined with prearranged codes, geography, and timing, it could convey messages of staggering complexity. Act Thread, the language of the sky. The smoke signal was not a universal language. There was no single Native American code. Like the spoken languages, of which there were hundreds, the smoke code was local, regional, and highly contextual. A signal used by a Lakota scout on the Great Plains might be meaningless to an Apache sentinel in the deserts of Arizona. This is the most critical point. The signal system worked precisely because it was a closed system. Your allies knew the code. Your enemies did not. It's a form of steganography, hiding a message in plain sight. We have records from U.S. Army signal officers, men trained in heliographs and flag-waving semaphore, who were completely mystified. They could see the smoke signals. They knew they meant something. They even tried to jam them by lighting their own fires, but they couldn't read them. They didn't have the key. The key was context. The meaning of a signal could change based on 3 factors: location, time, and form. First, location. Signals were not sent from random valleys. They were sent from pre-established high-visibility signal stations, buttes, mesas, and mountaintops that had been used for generations. These were known places, sacred places in some cases. If you are a Lakota warrior, you know to always keep an eye on that particular butte. If smoke appears from a different hill, a hill that is not a signal station, that in itself is a message. It might mean stranger or unknown party. The location was the first word of the sentence. Second, time. A signal sent at dawn when the air is calm and clear carried a different weight than one sent at midday when thermal currents could break up the smoke. And then there's the concept of night signals. We tend to forget this, but a fire at night is also a signal. Not the smoke, but the flame itself. By rhythmically covering and uncovering the flame with a blanket, you could create flashes of light, a form of Morse code, long before Morse. A single flash, look here. 2 flashes, all well. A rapid series of flashes, danger enemy sighted. This is visible for dozens of miles on a clear night. It's a different technique using the same tools. Finally and most complex, the form. This is the code itself. While specifics are lost to time or kept within tribal oral traditions, historical accounts and anthropological records have given us a basic understanding. Imagine a Lakota scout on the northern plains. He has been sent to find buffalo. His village many miles away is waiting. He spots a herd. 1 column. This is the attention or sighting signal. Miles away, a sentinel in his home village sees it. He knows who that scout is and where he was sent. The location and the single column together mean, I have found what I was looking for. 2 columns, a new, more specific message. This might be the prearranged code for large herd found. Now a different scenario, a different tribe, a different code. An Apache sentinel spots an enemy patrol. He needs to send the alarm. He covers the fire, holds, releases 1 puff, holds, releases a 2nd puff, holds, releases a 3rd puff, 3 puffs, the universal signal of danger or enemy. 3 is a very common number in these reports. 3 puffs, or a series of small, rapid, frantic puffs. It's the equivalent of an exclamation point. It means, danger, act now. The message is enemy sighted, and the location of the signal tells the village which direction the enemy is coming from. It was a system of trust. The man on the hill, he was the eyes for thousands. His hands got tired. His eyes watered from the smoke. But he held that blanket. He fed that fire. Because he knew the lives of his people, his family depended on that little wisp of smoke. It was a sacred duty. This intricate language, however, was not the only trick in the indigenous arsenal. In fact, in many parts of the continent, smoke wasn't the answer at all. The environment demanded an entirely different solution. Act 4. The other networks. The smoke signal. It is the iconic trick. An ingenious solution born of the vast open skies of the Great Plains and the high deserts of the Southwest. Its very existence is predicated on one non-negotiable factor: line of sight, a clear, unobstructed view stretching for 10, 30, even 50 miles. But what about here? In the ancient, dense eastern woodlands, home to the Iroquois, the Cherokee, the Shawnee, or the thick, rain-soaked, temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest, a smoke signal in the eastern woodlands is frankly an absurdity. It's a complete non-starter. You would be lucky to see a plume of smoke from 200 yards away, let alone 20 miles. The canopy traps it. The humidity dissipates it. The trees block it. The environment is completely wrong. To think that one trick applied to the entire continent is to fundamentally misunderstand the people who lived here. The problem is different, so the solution must be different. If the environment closes the channel of sight, you must open a new one. Here in these dense woods, the primary medium for long-distance communication was not light. It was sound. The drum. Across the world, from the rainforests of Africa to the islands of New Guinea, the drum was the original telegraph. And while not as universally documented in North America, drum communication was a vital and sophisticated tool in forested areas. We're not just talking about a beat for a ceremony. We're talking about drum languages. Many of these were slit drums, a large log hollowed out with a long slit, and the wood worked to different thicknesses. Striking it in different places produces different tones, a high tone and a low tone. And much like the puffs of smoke, or later the dots and dashes of Morse, code a rhythmic, prearranged combination of high and low tones could transmit complex messages. Gather for a council. Enemy approaching from the river. Hunter has returned, large kill. The low-frequency thump of the drum was perfectly suited to the environment. Unlike high-pitched sounds, which are easily scattered by leaves, the long, slow sound waves of the drum could travel for miles, penetrating the dense, wet air and rolling over and through the terrain. You have to use what the land gives you. In the plains, the land gives you an open sky. In the woods, it gives you the trees. It's a different kind of listening. The people of the forest, they used the trees to speak through the trees. The drum was the voice of the forest itself, a living tree giving its voice to the people. It was again a relationship. But the forest's solution was useless here. In the vast, sun-drenched canyons of the Apache, sound echoes strangely, and a drum's beat is a pinpoint, a here I am for an enemy to find. Here the challenge was different yet again. The Apache were masters of guerrilla warfare. Masters. Their entire strategy was based on stealth speed and invisibility. A smoke signal. A smoke signal is a giant 500-foot-tall neon sign that says, "The Apache are right here. Please come shoot at us." It's a beacon. It's the last thing you want when you're being hunted by the US cavalry. Their environment was awash in an overwhelming, blinding resource sunlight, and their enemy was a conventional army that traveled in predictable, slow-moving columns. The Apache solution was silent, faster than smoke, and in the right hands, the most secure communication system on Earth. They spoke with the sun itself. This is a heliograph. The US Army officially adopted it in the 1870s and thought it was a brilliant new technology. The indigenous peoples of this area, they had been sun-talking for centuries. Anything that reflects light can be a sun-talker. A piece of polished water-clear mica, a shard of obsidian polished to a mirror shine, and later, yes, a piece of a captured army mirror or a shiny belt buckle. The tool is simple. The skill is not. The principle is identical to the night fire signal. By rhythmically covering and uncovering the reflective surface, or by simply aiming it on and off the target, a signaler could send coded flashes of light. A short flash, a long flash, a series of 3. This was the Apache's masterpiece, and it is a pure example of steganography, hiding a message in plain sight. Think about it. A smoke signal is broadcast to everyone, but a sun flash, that is tiny. It's directional. You, the sender, are on one peak. The recipient is on another peak 20 miles away. You aim your flash only at him. An army patrol a mile to the left of that signal path. They see nothing. A patrol a mile to the right. Nothing. You have to be the exact intended recipient at the exact right location, looking at the exact right spot to even see it. It is a completely private conversation held in public over a distance of dozens of miles. It was a relay. This was not just a one-to-one call. It was a biological internet. The message would leapfrog from peak to peak with human beings as the routers. The information would be retransmitted across the mountain range, crossing 100 miles of rugged, impassable territory in a matter of minutes. The cavalry crawling through the canyon below would be completely unaware that their presence numbers and direction of travel were already being reported, generations of talk ahead of them. But for all the high-tech ingenuity of smoke drums and light, there was a problem. These systems all have very low data bandwidth. They are for headlines: danger, heard, come, all clear. How do you send a complex message? How do you send a political treaty, a trade agreement, a detailed scouting report? How do you send a story for this, the most reliable, secure, and data-rich communication system was also the oldest and most widespread? The message runner. The gold standard for this was the Inca Empire in South America. Their chasqui runners operated in a relay system so efficient it could move a message 150 miles a day, faster than a Spanish horse could travel on the same mountain terrain. They carried quipus, complex knotted strings that held vast amounts of numerical and narrative data. And we had vast, sophisticated networks of runners in North America as well. The Great Wagon Road of the Iroquois, the trade paths of the Mississippians, the runners of the Puebloan people. These men were not just fast. They were professional athletes, trained from birth for this single purpose. They mastered a specific loping high-efficiency gait, a runner's trance that could consume miles for hours on end. And they carried data, not just in their heads, but in mnemonic devices. A message stick might have notches and symbols carved into it, each reminding the runner of a specific point to make. This is a wampum belt. These aren't just pretty beads. This is a document. The patterns, the colors, this is a mnemonic device. This belt is the treaty. This is the record of the agreement. The runner would carry this and use it as the text for his oral presentation. He wasn't just carrying the message, he was the message. A runner was chosen for his endurance, yes, but he was chosen for his mind, for his memory. He had to be a person of honor, because he would be given the message word for word. A sacred oral text, and he would run. He would run for 10, maybe 15 miles to a relay station. The message never slept. It never slowed. It was passed like a flame from one man to the next, secure, data-rich, and reliable in any weather, day or night, smoke drum light and runner. This was not a collection of separate tricks. It was a fully integrated, multi-layered and redundant system. It was brilliant. It's systems thinking. If the sky was overcast, the heliograph was useless, so you'd send a runner. If you needed to send a fast, simple alarm, you used smoke. If the forest was too thick, the drum took over. If the message was complex, the runner was dispatched. They had a tool for every job, a system for every environment. They used what the land gave them, the endless sun of the desert, the resonant wood of the forest, the long open sight of the plains. The system wasn't something they built on the land. It was the land and the people working as one. But this intricate world, this web of communication woven from the very elements, was about to be torn apart. A new technology was coming, a song of a single metallic wire. Act 5. The Fading Signal, the 1860s and 1870s. This intricate human-scaled and ecologically bound world of communication was about to be shattered. A new technology was coming, humming with an alien power, indifference, and speed. It was the talking wire, the whispering spirit, the transcontinental telegraph. For the United States government and its coast-to-coast ambitions, the telegraph was the silver bullet. It was the ultimate tool of manifest destiny, a line of wire that could bind a continent, move armies, sell stocks, and above all coordinate a unified campaign of control. It was a weapon of pure, disembodied information traveling at the speed of electricity. You cannot overstate the paradigm shift. The indigenous networks, whether Smokelight or Runners, were all embodied. They required human skill, physical presence, sensory awareness, and a deep reciprocal knowledge of the land. The telegraph is the opposite. It's completely abstract. It's a binary code sent through a dead wire. It doesn't care about the weather. It doesn't care about the terrain. It doesn't care about the season. It simply imposes itself. It's the beginning of a technology that conquers distance rather than cooperates with it. And for the indigenous nations of the plains and the Southwest, it was recognized immediately as a profound existential threat. Tribes like the Lakota Cheyenne and Apache didn't see it as progress. They saw it as a metal serpented chain. My great-grandfather's people called it the whispering spirit. On a quiet day, you could put your ear to the pole and hear the hum. It was a voice that didn't belong. It was a voice that spoke of them, but never to them. It was the voice of the enemy, speaking to other enemies, coordinating their own destruction. It was the sound of a net being drawn closed. The resistance was immediate and highly strategic. War parties would make it a priority to cut the lines. They would tear down the poles for their own lodge poles or for firewood. In some accounts, warriors would sever the wire tie one end to a buffalo's horn and send the animal running, tearing the line down for miles. This wasn't simple vandalism. It was sophisticated information warfare. They were blinding their enemy. For a time, it was incredibly effective. An army outpost like Fort Laramie or Fort Phil Kearny would suddenly be cut off, deaf and dumb, unable to call for reinforcements or report on troop movements. The native forces would in that moment regain communication supremacy. But the wire was too easily repaired. The U.S. Army quickly learned to place the telegraph at the center of its entire strategy. Forts were built not just to control land, but to protect the line. The wire became the artery, and the forts were the armored knuckles protecting it. The clash was more than just technological. It was philosophical. The smoke signal was a prayer. It was a conversation with the land. You had to be humble. You had to ask the fire for its smoke. You had to ask the wind to carry it steady. You had to ask the sky to show it clearly. It was an act of partnership. The telegraph, it was a chain, a shackle on the land. It didn't ask, it just took. It was loud. It was a constant metallic noise that drowned out the old ways. It drowned out the quiet listening that the old signals required. But the ultimate silence came not from the wire itself, but from the brutal policy it enabled the reservation system. As indigenous peoples were forcibly violently removed from their ancestral lands and confined to small isolated territories, the great communication networks were severed. Not just metaphorically, but physically. This is the part that's so tragic. Think about how the system worked. It relied on freedom of movement. It relied on access to the signal stations, the sacred buttes, the high mesas, the ancestral peaks. Suddenly those buttes were on settler land. They were owned by a rancher. They were fenced off with barbed wire. You could be shot for trespassing on the very land your ancestors had used for 1,000 years. How does a runner system work when the paths are blocked? How does a smoke signal network function when you can no longer reach the station? How do you flash a mirror to a peak you are forbidden to climb? The reservation system was a deliberate severing of the web. It isolated bands from each other, making unified governance, or even just social connection, nearly impossible. The need for the signals didn't just fade, it was extinguished. The purpose to coordinate hunts, to warn of danger, to call councils was replaced by the dull, tragic static of dependence and confinement. The signal stations on the high buttes for the first time in millennia grew silent. The knowledge once as vital as breathing began to recede. The ancient trick became a memory. And then in the 20th century, a cartoon, a stereotype. But is that knowledge truly lost, or is it merely dormant? Lost is the wrong word. Ignored, Maybe. I teach these primitive techniques to military special forces, to search and rescue teams. Why? Because they work. A signaling mirror needs no batteries. A smoke signal can't be jammed by a foreign power's satellite or a cyber attack. It's the ultimate in resilient off-grid communication, in a world totally dependent on a fragile digital grid. This knowledge is in fact the future. The specifics of the codes may be gone lost to the trauma of that era. But the principle behind them is a vital lesson for humanity. This was a systems approach to technology. It teaches us to look at the world as a toolbox, not a resource to be plundered. It's a form of cognitive diversity, a different way of thinking and problem-solving that we've nearly erased. And we are so much poorer for it. The sky is still there. The wind is still there. The fire is still there. The land remembers. The knowledge isn't lost. It's just sleeping. It's written in the stones of those high places. It's waiting. It's waiting for us to stop talking, to stop listening to all the noise from all the wires. It's waiting for us to be quiet enough to listen again, to look up from our small screens and see the big sky and to wonder, what message is it carrying for us today? The smoke has faded and the signals are silent, but the knowledge remains a testament to human ingenuity and a profound connection to the land. This wisdom, this deep understanding of the natural world, is a legacy we all share. If you were moved by this story of lost knowledge, please like this video and share it with others who value our shared history. Subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of the past. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for watching.